Welcome to Read the Bible with me, with Steve Hernandez. I'm Steve Hernandez. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever podcasts are sold. Please join our Patreon, and you'll get tons of free. Why is it free? It's not free.
It's not free.
I just told you to pay us money. For $5 a month, you'll get access to a bunch of podcasts. Gerardo's got a podcast called, I always forget the name.
Go Hardo Al Capone.
Go Hardo Al Capone, which is a great name for a podcast. I, of course, have my comedy sex podcast, Put It In My Mouth. That's also, you get a new episode basically every week for that too. So you get tons of content for the $5. $20 for support. That's just like straight up if fucking God calls you to.
And also next week, we're going to be going to Judah Smith's church, dude.
Yeah, you'll get that episode soon. Okay, folks. But yes, next week, whenever, I don't know what it is for you, for December 15th. I don't know when you're hearing this, but we're taking Ani Easton Baker, and we are going to Judah Smith's home church. So I can't wait to review that. That's going to be great. You'll get tons of free content if you join us over at patreon.com/readthebibleWithMePodcast. I'm so excited for today. One of my old good comedy friends is here. She's a comedian. She's an art critic. She's a writer. You can catch her on Two Pink Doors on Hulu. And her first book, Aesthetical Relations, is out now. Folks, please give a warm Jesus welcome to Christina Catherine Martinez.
Woohoo!
Thank you for the string cheese.
we got you. You know, you're coming from one of those clown zoo shows.
Came straight from the clown show.
Yeah.
And I parked. I was half joking, but I was like, "You got any string cheese?"
Yeah. And we do have string cheese.
And you're like, "Yes, bitch, we got strawberries too."
I got you strawberries. You got string cheese. You got a wild cherry diet Pepsi, which I don't know if you feel this way, Gerardo, but yeah. I do feel like a wild cherry Pepsi is a very Mexican drink. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, if it was like Coke, then I would say the most Mexican, but...
Oh, I do think... Christina, do you think... I think Pepsi is very Mexican.
Really?
Well, no. To me, I mean, it's Coke, but it's Mexican Coke. But I think that's a thing for, like, bourgeois, like, immigrant families. As a totem of, like, some sort of folkloric authenticity. Yeah. I was always younger. I was like, oh, it's Mexican Coke because... my family's from Mexico.
Yeah.
But maybe on a real level.
Yeah, I'm talking real level. Listen, my dad is such a huge fan of Pepsi. My dad will be at a restaurant and he'll be like, "Do you have Pepsi?" And they'll say no, and he'll be like, "I'll have water." That's how much that fool loves Pepsi.
I feel like RC Cola is really Mexican.
RC Cola, Shasta, I think if we're going back old enough. I know you're not as old as me, Christina, but...
I think I am.
No, we're close, but we're not. It's not that close.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. We say our ages.
I say my age all the time, so I'm open to that.
What do you?
1, 2, 3.
37.
See?
I'm gonna be 37 in a couple weeks.
That's great. How do you feel about that?
Ever since I turned 36, I started just mentally referring to myself as 40, so I'll be ready for it. I'm not joking. I feel good. I feel really good.
Good. I don't say this about everyone, but I do think, I do think you have an old soul. I mean, I especially don't say that about 21-year-old girls.
I hope not.
But I do think you have an old soul, and I do think you're going to, the older you get, come more into your own, physically, mentally, sexually, all that stuff. It feels like, as I watch you online, we've been friends for a few years now, but it feels like you're unfurling and blossoming and growing. Am I off base when I say that?
No, you're absolutely right. The irony is I feel also like more like a kid in some ways than I ever have before. I'm a dumbass and I'm a simpleton. There's parts of me, I'm embracing that part of myself. I tried to be an intellectual for so long, and I carried that over into my comedy. And I was like, I'm going to do smart comedy. It's been so good to realize how fun it is to be dumb.
Well, I mean, clowning is that, isn't it? I'm not a clown. If you folks don't know this, there's a big clowning scene here in LA. I think it's replaced what used to be alternative comedy in so many ways, but there's I don't think alternative comedy exists anymore, but I do think there's a large clowning scene that kind of, I don't know, why do you think more straight men aren't involved with clowning?
Why more straight men aren't involved with clowning?
Yes.
Do you think I speak on their behalf?
No, I'm just...
Because clowning is truly about vulnerability. It's really like a stripping down. It's about vulnerability and presence, and it's not in a heavy way. I think that doesn't mean it's people are... I have cried, and that was a big part of my clown training.
This is the rumor too, and Christina could either vouch for this or she doesn't have to speak to this too. But there are a couple of big clown teachers here. I'm not going to say their names in LA. But the thing is, here's what everyone says: is you pay $500, and then the first day in clown school, they make you cry.
It's not that. It's true, but it's also, I realize it's not that they make you cry. They just show you where you're at. And I was in a place where I was like so locked up. I think the first thing that happened in clown classes, he was like, let's all warm up. So just listen to the music. And then, let's just find ways to put pleasure in our bodies. And I'm like, that, and literally shortly after, I was like, I should go to therapy. Because and I think, not that comedians are inherently broken people, just that like comedy has a way of opening that stuff up. Yeah. And because what was really interesting is that there were a lot of people, this was years ago that I started taking clown classes. I'm a bit of a veteran. What was more instructional for me, rather than just seeing me and my friends flip out, was seeing people not do that at all. And it was usually the people who were not professional comedians, not people trying to do comedy or acting at all, but there were a lot of people who were just taking clown classes for fun. And they were clearly not as affected by all of these exercises. To me, that was like, it's about vulnerability, but it's not about, that doesn't necessarily mean it's about being a mess. It's just that's where some people are at, and that's where I was at. I think people get stuck there, and they're like, oh yeah, clown, it's just, all your feelings and putting your bullshit and the whole mess of your unvarnished shit on the audience. It's like, I think that's a step, but then you got to pick yourself up. And, this is a discipline, and it's also entertainment. So if it's not fun for an audience to watch, I think clown class can be a good place to get that stuff out.
Is there any beef between clowns and mimes?
I do think it's, you correct me too if I'm wrong, I think they kind of come out of the same school. Is that correct?
You don't speak for all clowns.
I don't speak for all clowns. I'm not formally trained as much as some people are, so I don't think there is a big difference, is that like a mime is a very specific silent discipline. Mime is more of a technique. I think clown is more of a philosophy.
So when you see a mime, you're like, look at this clown. You know what I mean?
And the mime, I passed by a mime and I said, look at this clown. And he was like, don't produce me! But I think like people, I'm one of the few clowns that I know that also just stuck with straight stand-up. And it's really changed. I did a set, it was at American Comedy Company on Sunday.
I was going to ask you about that. Now, this is a San Diego audience down in the Gaslight District.
Oh, yeah.
And then you headlined that show with our friend. Why am I blanking on his name right now? The producer.
Connor,
yeah.
Connor Loudman, yeah. There's only 4 of us on the show, and we each, I didn't headline, but we all did. There's only 4 of us, so we each did like 20 minutes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since I've done a set that long, especially of straight stand-up. I was like, I'm going to get my shit together in the car. Didn't do that. I was surprised. I had so much fun, especially because last time I was in San Diego, I was headlining a different comedy club that I did not have a great time at. That shall not be named.
There's only a couple of them, folks.
So by process of elimination, you will know. They know what they did. But it was one of those sets, and so corny, where I had so much fun. It was so good. It was like a total San Diego crowd. And I was so loose, but not in a horrible way. I watched the tape later, and I was like, this is not a showcase tape, but I'm glad I'm having fun. I had this is totally like the clown thing. We were all freaking out because I was going to start doing notes in the car. I was like, the boys sit up front. I'm going to take notes and get my shit together on this 3-hour car ride. Didn't do anything. And right before we're there, and I'm just like, I can't freak out. I'm like, there's nothing I'm going to do in the next 10 or 15 minutes. It's going to make me somehow internalize a whole 20-minute set. So I'm just going to slow down. I've been doing this long enough where I can do that. And there was a plate of celery sticks backstage because I asked them, like, do you have any vegetables? And they're like, just celery. And right before I went on, I just put a bunch of celery sticks in my bra and in my underwear. And then and I just went out and I kind of I had like the first minute or so in my head, I'm going to start with this. And then I just like went with it. And then every time if I lost my train of thought or I was a little bit stuck, I just pulled a piece of celery out of my underwear and took a crunch. Just so dumb. Like, it's not even really funny, maybe. Yeah. But in a comedy club, just the tiniest, silliest thing is, and it just bought me just enough time to like go on to the next thing. I truly was like, I'm losing my train of thought here. Hold on. And celery. There were just all these really perfect moments. I said something. I really felt that like, oh, the clown is really coming into the stand up because it's kind of a rowdy crowd. There were a lot of talky-loos and everyone was like, other comics were, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Other comics were kind of complaining about it, but I was like, I loved it, especially if I'm loose and they're doing stuff. One girl, I was telling a story and I said, oh, this is a technique I learned from this guy with abs. I said, what I learned from dating a man with abs. And this girl just goes, nothing. And instead of moving, and that's kind of rude, it's maybe not like the best thing to do. And instead of even like getting mad at her and moving on, I was just like, that sounds like a really aggro like pop song. Like, what do you learn from a guy with abs? And then nothing. And then I led everybody in a little song. And that's just like, you know, I didn't do a lot of material because I was just playing, and that's something you learn in clown. And I hadn't been able to do that in a way that actually worked for a long time. I cried after my set. I'm not joking. It was one of those where just like, oh, because it's been so hard for so long. I remember why I do this because it's this good sometimes, you know?
Well, yeah, if anyone has, you know, if any stand-ups talk shit about clowning, I do think what you do is like the perfect blend. You know, I haven't explored clowning in any ways, but I know the idea is to be in the moment, to use your body, to not think with your brain and, you know, use all these words, which is the opposite of stand-up in so many ways. I think if you can bring both of them together.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying. And it was interesting, some guy that he was kind of a fan who had said, oh, I saw you here like a few years ago when you did a half hour. He's like, yeah, you were dropping knowledge. I thought that your set was like so smart and so cool and funny. And he's like, now you're just so silly. And I know he was trying to pay me a compliment, but I got a little bit in my head. I'm like, I'm still smart. Like, I could still drop knowledge. You know, it comes, ideally, it's always like a good blend of the two, but it leans toward one or the other most of the time.
Well, I know Gerard and I always are debating about, like, what comedy is and what stand-up is and what it can be and how it, you know, the more we try to take it seriously or try to teach and stuff like that, that it gets away from what it is sometimes, so. But
I don't think there's an answer, but that's why it's fun. That's why we like it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah? What do you have to say about that?
I think mimes are dope. That's all I got to say.
Wow. What a quote.
I went to like 2 weeks of mime school when I was in college theater.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the only thing about it that sucks is that it's not real. And to me, comedy's real, baby. You know
what do you mean when you say it's not real?
It's just not real. Like, if you're climbing a ladder, it's not there, you know?
But
like, for instance, what's funnier? Christina pulling out celery from her underwear, or pulling out nothing and saying it's celery? You know what I mean?
Well, I wouldn't say it's celery. I'd have to communicate it with my body.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, I'm very caught up on this notion of authenticity. So there's something I think people like to think that maybe clowning is not as authentic because it can be really abstract or really silly. I had this great conversation. I don't know if I want to. Conversation with Josh Fadum a long time ago, and we were talking about comedy and stand-up. This is before I got really into clowning, and he was like, "Yeah, people always ask me like why my stand-up isn't personal." Hope it's okay that I tell this story. It's really nice though, and he had such a great perspective. He's like, it's really weird to me when people say that my stand-up isn't personal because it's very silly. He's very clown-like. He's very physical, and he's like, you know, when you grow up being told that you can't act a certain way or that you can't do this, you can't do that, like being silly and being that is just very personal, you know? And that is, I just think it's two different things. You can either show it or explain it. and some people, can do both. But that really unlocked it for me, that idea of, well, no, it is. This is totally, I'm not contradicting you, because maybe with Mimes it's different, because it really is just about like, but I think it feels, in different ways, they both feel extremely vulnerable. Because also I've heard clowns talk about stand-up that are just like, oh, that's terrifying. Like, talk about my life? Are you kidding? A lot of clowns see stand-up as more vulnerable than clowning, because you can also, in clowning, you can just hide in the silliness too. In stand-up, you gotta talk about something,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm on the clowning vulnerability train, so yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm like being vulnerable, but the more I just take care of myself outside of comedy, the more I'm stronger to like actually be vulnerable in comedy. Nothing I do on stage is therapeutic.
And I imagine you grew up around here, around Boyle Heights area. Is that true?
Boyle Heights and Whittier.
Yeah. So, and you're Mexican, so you've been shut down, and you grew up Christian.
I just recently started talking a little bit about my early life on stage, which I have not done.
Yeah.
There people that for being vulnerable, like, I've had cancer. I don't talk about that on stage. I've been raped. I haven't figured out how to make that funny yet.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll get there. Yeah. And I don't talk a lot about my childhood, which was bad. But I put it this way, and this was also something I came to realize on stage. I say a joke that I was homeschooled, and I grew up in kind of a very religious, like evangelical, I would say fundamentalist kind of environment. And it's not that, I think it's not that I technically grew up in a cult, but like those two things together add up to more than the sum of their parts. It's kind of cult-like. Like I didn't go to school until I was 12 years old. And the only reason I started going to school is because my parents couldn't afford to not have both of them working anymore. I think we would have been there forever. So
what were you like then? Like that, just homeschooling your parents? Were there other kids in your homeschool program?
Yeah, we had this we were part of this like Christian homeschool co-op called Painter Avenue Christian School. Everybody's getting put on blast today. I think we eventually got kicked out because, the Mexican and the Christianity, it was very this, but I have a big spirit, and my brothers do too, and like they were bad kids. I was bad. We're just troublemakers, It's like whack-a-mole. You try to push down the spirit, but it just pops out in different ways. So I think I was like definitely beat down metaphorically and literally in a lot of different ways. But I think I was a really cute, sweet, funny kid. I think when you say there's like this unfurling happening, I think how I am now is more like how I was naturally as a kid, I was a very open, trusting person.
Where were your when did your parents give their lives to Christ? Like, what were they dealing with so that they fell so in love with this concept of religion and stuff? Because I have a feeling, I may be wrong, that they didn't grow up that way.
I think they grew up very strict and Catholic.
Yes.
And I think they came to Christianity, God in their way, like a little bit later, like maybe in their teens.
Yeah.
Because I know that yeah.
By the way, Gerardo, whatever you're picturing her parents, you're picturing it wrong. They're like very hot, like attractive, hip people.
I forgot you met my parents.
Yeah. I met your mom and I met your dad. They're both very like hip, hot. They would probably be, if your dad, I don't think he's ministering still, but we would probably be reviewing their clips because he's a very hip. Her dad's a very hip guy. Yeah,
it was. We're very like model minority, hip bourgeois Latin immigrants who learned good American taste.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did your dad pride himself on that growing up? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot in terms of my, my healing journey and my integration. Because I even like look different than I did when I first started comedy. I had like short hair and it was all spiky and crazy, and I dressed really wacky, not normal, not normal like this. I just had this thing. I've actually calmed down quite a bit in terms of like my personal style, and I think a lot of that was like when I grew up, my parents were really into, and I had to come in terms of like, I love waspy white people, East Coast style. That feels exotic to me. You know, when I dated like a super waspy guy, or I've dated a lot of Jewish boys, I'm just like, oh, you're so white. And I don't even think fetishize is the right word, but I realized I'm like, that's how my parents dressed us when we were little. Like, Nautica, LL Bean. And then I tried to rebel against that by like being punk, which is just a different kind of white. And now that I'm grown up, I'm just like, you know what? I like a good loafer. I like looking nice. I love a good LL Bean tote.
Yes.
My thing now is I get LL Bean totes and I try to monogram them with Spanish curse words to see if they will do it. Because it says on the website.
Have they done it?
Yeah. I got one that says chingona, and I have one that says Latinx with a question mark, because I still have a complicated relationship with that identity.
Do you think you have fetishized white people in that way, romantically?
Oh yeah. I think I grew up in an environment where it was just like, it's the whole European, just that white people are better.
Yes.
No one had ever said that out loud to me, but it was in the air, you know, that like, we're dirty, we're lazy, we're bad. White people are good. White people are cleaner. That was just the model of like, you know, white upper middle class East Coast living was just like, that's the American dream. That's what we're doing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, even when you look at like representation and stuff, especially if you're a little older, there was nothing. I watched Valley Girl again recently, and it was just like, there's not a fucking brown person to be seen anywhere. So I mean, when people, I don't know how I feel about representation meaning that much or anything, but I don't know how you cannot be a brown person and see nothing but white people on TV and not think, oh yeah, white people's the best. And
like TV and in life, you know, I was around, wasn't around other like brown kids in our Christian homeschool group.
So it was like a lot of white people, primarily white people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up to my tits in these white people.
Well, the church I grew up into too is like all white. We were like the Mexican family, and there's a black family and the Mexican family. And I do
remember there was the black family, the one black family. So fucking ridiculous.
Ours were the Burks. Good to see you, Kenny, Kendra, Naomi, Nicole. Our cars would like our alternating families' cars would break down. So there'd be times where each other would have to pick each other, the whole other family up. They lived in La Puente, we lived in West Covina, and we'd all drive together, the blacks and the Mexicans tumbling out of these cars.
Tumbling out of the Aerostar. I remember when another Mexican family came in that there were a few, but I remember when like just being first time I made friends with like other Mexican girls at church, and that was huge. It wasn't huge in retrospect. It just sort of felt like it's this like thing you couldn't articulate it then, but it was like I felt calmer and just like more chill. I'll never forget. This is very traumatic. The first time. I even forget their names. There were these two sisters that were really nice to me when I was very little, and they had a sleepover at their house, and they had a bunch of their friends from school who like I didn't know, and they were also Mexican girls. Mean ones. Bad ones. You know, like little fucking cabronas or whatever. Just mean little Mexican girls. It happens. And I had this is part of the whole like, as like a mixed race immigrant, I grew up between two worlds. But I was at this slumber party with a bunch of other Mexican girls, but I'm white. So I remember I had my mom come and pick me up because like this one girl, this like Queen Bee one was like being so mean to me all night long. And she kept calling me a white girl and saying like, you're done. I don't know, little kid insults, but I was just like so wounded, and it was so fucked up and confusing because to have someone use that as an insult.
Yes. Of course. Well, if you grow up like that, like I did.
No.
I don't know. What was Rancho Cucamonga like, Gerardo? Did you
Very
feel
white.
like you were a coconut? Like, you know, that's what yeah, I know, of course, you know, you did, I did, but did you feel that way?
You know, I really have like a heavy pushback against that because I grew up Mexican as fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in order to be like accepted, I guess I talk the way I talk.
Yeah.
But I still went and got fucking mojadas with my grandpa every weekend.
Yeah.
We did that too. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
It was just this like And then on the weekends when we see my grandma, also, like, what's the opposite of a coconut? Because I'm white on the outside and brown on the inside.
I don't know, but because you were light skinned, you feel like you had a whole different experience also?
Oh yeah. Yeah, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Most people who don't know don't assume I'm Mexican.
What do you think they think you are?
People assume I'm Italian or Jewish.
Yeah.
I think there's some Spanish or French colonial blood back in there, because always people from Europe are like, are you from Corsica? Which is like such a random specific thing to say.
She's pounding on strawberries right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're not supposed to eat during podcasts?
Yeah, that's all right.
Is this ASMR podcast?
I thought you were actually clowning. You were chewing so loud right now.
That's my secret, Steve.
That's all right.
I'm always clowning.
It's
like that. What is saying the Hulk movie? He's like, that's my secret. I'm always angry.
Yes, yes, that's the one.
I'm always clowning. No, I was thinking. I thought, and the camera was off, so I'm not really aware of myself right now.
I know when the camera was on, you just kept looking at yourself.
It's hard not to. The lighting was so good.
Is that why you turned it off, Gerardo? She couldn't help it.
I've been doing too many Zoom shows where I'm just like,
you know, it's so funny. We at the Chatterbox, we have a mirror behind us, and I'm just always like watching women like checking themselves out, just like giving.
This
themselves
is not. Oh my God! Yeah. This is how we've been socialized.
Yeah, it's not your fault. I've
grown up. We live in an image-mediated society, and I'm just a little mixed-race immigrant I've internalized a lot of really damaging feminine self-image pathologies from looking at idealized pictures of women online because of lack of representation.
There you go. It's not your fault.
The Zoom shows was a big thing. After I found myself just being like in the camera.
I mean, I was doing that too. I think it was terrible for performing. I said yes to 2 rounds of Zoom shows, and then I started saying no.
Well, they did good for me. I was just like, I went through a breakup right before lockdown, so I was like really bored and really alone. So out of almost desperation, I really threw myself into the Zoom shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
It is good. I'm trying to put together I saved every single Zoom show that I'd done.
Oh my God.
I have a big Google Drive of it, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with that. Zoom retrospective.
Yes, please. I'm not ready for it yet.
I know. That's what I mean. Like this, it's so painfully delusional to think that that's going to be important. But I feel like, at least for me anyway, a few years from now, it'll be interesting to see that stuff.
No, I definitely think. To me, when I hear Zoom still, though, I do think of like the pandemic and the worst part of it. There's so many times when Julie and I are like we're at the movies or something, and I'm like, man, I can't believe how dark that time was.
You get flashbacks. It's like, yeah, I'm still not recovered. That's why I guess I'm doing kind of a lot of shows right now, but not nearly as much as I did before.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to do an hour or do a solo show. I feel so delicate.
Yeah.
Still right now.
No, I feel the exact same way. And I almost don't want to rush back into it either. I feel like I'm not honoring that time if we just pick up and go where we left off. It feels like something is fundamentally shifted, and if we just hop back on the hamster wheel again, then we're not acting as if we learned something very important.
That's why I feel crazy right now, because normally this time of year is when things slow down anyway.
Yeah.
But sort of we're entering the holidays, which should be a slowdown time at a time when live events are back. So there's the hungry energy, and I feel it. I'm still just like, well, I should be on there, like do more. But I'm like, I'm really trying to fight it, and I definitely have a little bit of a tude. I'm like, oh yeah, look what happened to all that. We need to slow down and like critique of grind culture. What happened to those 3-hour phone conversations I was having with people about how like we're really gonna reevaluate the pace at which we like do this, and I'm gonna divorce my self-worth from my productivity. And now they're like, put me on your show.
Yeah. I'm very like I'm trying to figure out like how I feel about the entertainment business. I don't want to be too critical, because I'd hate to like turn my back on it, because that thing is still the big carrot that's out there for us. You know,
there's no carrot. Yeah. There's just that's what I learned. Like, there's no carrot. There's just this.
Yeah.
And I
mean, that's what I've always told myself in order to be happy. Because if we were waiting for people to bestow upon us opportunity or people to bestow upon us, accolades or anything like that. I've just never felt comfortable living my life in that way, where I'm waiting for somebody else to give me the thing and to be happy, to wait to be happy. But I also am like very, I don't think I'm ready to be openly critical yet, because I still want I still want to write. Yeah, to burp. I still want to write on a TV show.
Of course, I don't think you have to. I think you can be critical and still have that. It's just I've realized like there's no. I mean, going back to like religious stuff, the big thing that I had to like internalize and grieve in therapy is like, no one's coming to save me. And that's sort of apart from like my own relationship with God or whatever, but I just kept feeling like I just kept waiting for some like magic wand thing to happen professionally and like with my relationships, like, oh, this person's going to fix everything, or like this opportunity is going to fix everything. And it's a little bit like fantasy thinking, like life isn't like that. I think things will work out, but it's going to be because of the accretion of lots of discipline and like work and on my part. And also luck,
It's very interesting. I've never thought about that before, and that does sound like, I wonder if there is this thing in people. That's why the Christ story like resounds in so many of our hearts, where it is that someone's going to come save us. From the Old Testament on, there was always this thing where people never wanted to trust in God. They always wanted a king. They always want someone to put their trust in. But ultimately, and I do believe this, that we only have each other. That we're only going to save each other, we're only going to help each other, and that that we're fools if we think someone's going to help us.
I know this is a Bible podcast, but I want to read you a poem that my therapist sent me.
All right.
I don't see her anymore. That relationship ended in a very natural, wonderful way. But this is why.
How long did you see them for?
Almost 5 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and she was great. I mean, she also gave me, and obviously very aware of like where my trauma comes from, and she gave me a lot of poetry and stuff to read. This is a poem by Mary Oliver. I don't know where to look because I can't see myself on the monitor anymore. This is huge for me. This poem is called Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's very beautiful, and I think it's very spiritual, and it was almost that same moment where, like, my clown teacher's like, so just do whatever you do to find pleasure in your body. And I'm like, that first line, you do not have to be good. I'm like,
Yeah, I always told myself that no one person will ever satisfy my need for attention.
Oof, yeah. I think, and times, and I've been sort of reading about getting into like Eastern, other forms of spirituality, and the biggest fundamental difference that I've internalized, not even internalized yet, especially between like Christianity, at least as I experienced it and understood it, is all about that you're perfect in God's love. You're wonderful when you accept Christ. Like, you're broken without him. And that's a separation. And the general feeling it from Buddhist, readings is that there's no separation. It's that, like, you are already perfect. You are already good. You're not, that feeling that you're like a broken piece of shit that needs to be saved. That's socializing. That's what's been put into you. And actually, like, in the process of saving yourself is not about like asking someone else. It's about remembering that you're already perfect as you are. Mm-hmm. I need to hear that. So I'm into that shit lately.
I mean, all the clips we watch, all these guys. I was even talking about this with Johnny Pemberton last week. It's like they're all like, you're not good enough. You feel like a failure, and God will make you feel whole. It's it's crazy how much that's like the whole thing. Which
it's so close to me because I like a lot of the messaging, even just about. But it's always like, but you got to do this. It's like you're gonna be you're gonna be perfect. You're gonna be happy. You're gonna be whole, but you need to ask for it first, or you need to, what is that ritual? What does that look like? The accepting God into your heart,
or it's in Christ.
Yeah,
it's you're perfect in Christ, where this guy is standing away in for your broken like body full of mistakes and sin. It is this thing that we're innately bad. That is Christianity. We're innately bad, and we need someone to come save us. And and I think. When we're talking about our parents, when we're talking about who are, Mexicans growing up in a white supremacist America and stuff like that, where they want to do this, it makes sense to them that they're not good enough. And so they want to give themselves over to this thing.
Yeah, I do think, I don't like stereotypes. I don't like generalization. I do think like different nationalities have a certain national character, and like Mexicans, we're so emotional.
Yeah, you've heard the songs. Gerardo, you know the song.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Like
just sounds like crying when they say.
I agree with like the antagonizing views of stereotypes towards Mexicans. That's why when you ask me like if I'm a coconut, I hate that shit, dude.
Yeah.
Because I grew up the most Mexican that I could, and I was never accepted by either side in a way.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way too. I would never use that thing, but I remember thinking that I was whitewashed, or like a second class Mexican because I don't know Spanish.
Yeah, I mean neither. But then like, how do you reclaim? Then it feels so disingenuous. I would like to learn Spanish at some point. I'm learning French right now. And the first time I started going to Mexico City a few years ago, like for art stuff, and I had this whole. It sounds so corny, but I had this whole like back to the motherland experience. It was just like, oh shit, because I hadn't gone to Mexico since I was little, and it was sort of like my family was like, we're not looking back.
Yeah,
but like, it was nothing what I thought it was gonna be like. I'm like, it's so beautiful. I feel weirdly so at home here, even though I don't speak the language. Obviously, sometimes when you're there, it scares up more Spanish than I think I know. But like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna start like? Get a Frida Kahlo tattoo, like there, like this experience is weird and in between. It is like it's legitimate, and I don't have to try to be more Mexican because whatever that idea that I have in my mind of what it is, like it doesn't exist. I do that. I indulge in that ironic. I'm like, what am I? Should I wear the little blouses? Like, what am I gonna? That's what I find a little weird about a lot of these. A lot of the shows that are about like Mexicans on TV right now. It's a little like I have this one friend who shall not be named, and we're both the same. We both like grew up Mexican but not really speaking Spanish, and she does this thing where like if she has to throw in a Spanish word, she really makes a fucking meal out of it. Just like, oh yeah, so my sister Wendy and I, we went out for quesadillas. And I'm like, I get that impulse. I want to like reclaim something, but that was never really there. And like, how am I going to do it? So these like corny, like folkloric iconography, cartoon images of Mexicanness that are available.
Well, the other part for me, too, is that there is all of that stuff we just discussed, but also there's this part of me that also knows that it doesn't matter. That I'm always trying to, that as much as I am Mexican, I don't think that matters. It's hard to take pride in a thing that I haven't chosen. I just happen to be born this way. I always want to push forward with things that I've chosen, that principles and things so none of that stuff has to do with being Mexican. It's almost like when I want people to look at me, I want them to know that I'm Mexican, and also that it doesn't mean anything. Yeah,
I hope so. I want to wear hoop earrings more. But sometimes I do. To me, like I feel more like wearing big dickies and a button up is more like a folk costume than like wearing a dress.
A few years ago, I started dressing like that some, and I still dress like that sometimes. And I do.
I like having it as an option.
Yeah, it makes me laugh. Like to me, I think it's funny to dress like a cholo, and that I look like a cholo sometimes.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing. People still, that's still just a huge culture. But I don't feel ironic or parodic when I dress that way at all.
No. Yeah, I just think this is funny that I can put this on, that people will look at me and then think I'm, a gangster or a cholo or something like that. That's hysterical to me that you would think that about me. Let's look at one clip, and then we got a little Bible to get into. Mm-hmm. This guy's name is Judah Smith. He's Justin Bieber's Judah Smith.
Okay, I was gonna say Judas.
He's Justin Bieber's new pastor. Although he was kind of trading off with the other guy. We're going to see him next week, so we'll put that out for the Patreon.
Is it going to be on the?
Yeah, it's going to be on the. Grab some headphones.
This life is much more a mystery than it's not.
What?
And yet we sit in auditoriums like this and we pretend to be the captain of our ship. We pretend to be the one with the steering wheel. Are you kidding yourself? Your whole life is grace. What color are your eyes? Did you check that box before you were born? I want brown eyes. It's all grace.
It's all grace, baby.
Life is much.
Okay, see, I love it. You could critique preaching like you could critique stand-up. Like, why is he yelling?
This is his style, but everything he just said in this clip isn't too different than what we're talking about.
That's what I mean. I agree with that. It's all grace, but the trick is it's already here. I don't need to ask for it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Well, and it's already inside me.
Even if we're talking about Christianity, I think that kind of, there's different verses in the Bible where the idea that we have to ask is, I don't even know if it's there. Let's play by, when we're talking about Christianity on this podcast, I call it like we're playing within the rules of Star Wars or Dungeons and Dragons. We're playing within the theology of that thing. So there are rules in the Bible, and I do think that if Christ did die for our sins and the price is paid, that has nothing to do with us. Then the price is paid. Now, I don't believe in any of this shit.
It's a beautiful idea.
Yes, if God did send his son, I don't believe any of this stuff, but the idea of freeing us from something, if maybe it's the idea of guilt, I'm very open to that. The idea that we have to do anything to be better or to be good, like you talked about earlier.
Yeah. When has shame ever been a productive emotion?
It's not. And it's not. And the idea that I do believe, even if you are a Christian, the idea of having shame or feeling guilty about things goes against the Bible. It goes against the idea of Christ already paid for that. So us feeling guilty or having shame about these things is really saying that we are in control of our life still.
What's another way of saying, it's all grace? I don't want to yell in the microphone, but that guy was fucking yelling grace at me.
Yeah. I mean, but people need that. This is just a funny little verse I want to read about, and I want to talk to you about this too. Let's see here. This is.
Oh man!
No,
I thought we were gonna get into Leviticus.
No.
I want that.
This is just
dark
John.
Leviticus shit.
I'm always struck by, we're all Mexicans here. I'm always struck by how much Jesus did not like his mom or his family, and how it's very much ingrained in our culture to give love and respect to our moms at all costs. But I want you to know, especially if you're a Latino, that Jesus did not like his mom. And I want to read just a couple of these verses. By the way,
I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
I needed to hear that today.
This is out of the HarperCollins Study Bible, the New Revised Standard Edition. My friend Chris Brown, who watches this show, who leads a very open, progressive church up north in wine country. I don't even think he would call it church. He sent me this. So Chris, if you're listening, if you're watching, thank you so much for this. I really do appreciate it. It has the apocryphal books on this too, which I don't know that much about the Apocrypha, but I'd like to get into it. This is the John, which is the crazy book. Whenever we discuss the book of John, this is the crazy gospel where Jesus is like God. He's like a walking God and does all these crazy, weird miracles and says, you can only come through God through me. He never says any of the stuff in any of the other gospels, mostly. But this miracle happens only in this, but I do love this. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." And then he fills up the things and makes wine too. But I love Jesus just calling his mom woman.
Bitch! Bitch! What do you think? What do you think?
Yes.
Because I've been getting into Jungian analysis as well, where
Yes.
the wedding. What do you think the wedding means? Because that's something that metaphor is something you're up with a lot, like the bride of Christ, or the church is the bride of Christ and married. What is that?
So what do you think the wedding means in regards to Christ?
Yeah, or just in Christianity, like why is that keeps coming up, like this image of the wedding? What does that represent to you?
What do you think?
I mean, you're teeing me up. I was interested to see if you had a theory, because it's like I have always, and for girls, it's so much more fucked up, this idea that like you were saving yourself for marriage and you're a bride of Christ, and I'm like, so I'm gonna fuck God, but like I can't get finger banged by this guy, or like what? And I'm a piece, blah blah blah. What's interesting to me is in Jungian analysis, what I've been reading a lot of is like the wedding is just a metaphor for like integration, and it's something that wholeness, I guess I would say, and it has nothing to do. And a lot of the analysts that I read are very, very adamant about pointing out this is not about romantic love. This is not about relationships. That the wedding is just like an image, an analogy we use to talk about that integration of all those parts of ourselves, like your masculine, your feminine, your shadow, and your higher self, and that like a fully integrated person is almost just like married to themselves. And I think it goes back to what we were saying, because marriage representing the union of like you and Christ, or like God's love, or the church and Christ. It's the same thing of like that, it's wholeness, but it's like it's you and someone else. It's like it's this outside thing that you have to accept, or that you have to like get or take in some way. Whereas like I've been learning about the wedding as a metaphor for just like it's all inside of you, but you have to like let the wedding happen.
So,
I've never said any of this stuff out loud. So
no. I love all these ideas, and I do believe what you said is true. But I think if we're talking about Christianity,
that's what I'm saying. I'm asking because this is just how I've been. When I hear about the wedding as a metaphor in Jungian analysis, that makes sense to me. And I guess what I'm saying is I've never really quite. That's why I'm asking what you think it represents, because the wedding has never really made sense to me in Christianity, or the way it was sort of talked about.
Well, I mean, it kind of does. If we're talking about what we've been talking about, that we are always lacking, that we always need something outside of us to be complete, then everything you said just makes complete sense.
It's like you got to ask, like God's asking you to marry him, and you got to say yes.
Yes, that we're lacking, and that we have to. God doesn't ask anything. He impregnated Mary without her permission. Let's not forget that he assaulted her. So God never asks. He takes what he wants, and that's a very Jewish way to think. But I like that idea, because if there is a God, he does whatever the fuck he wants to do.
I think so.
Yeah. If there is a God, he doesn't really have much to do with the idea of love as we know it. He's all powerful and all knowledgeable in a way that we could never understand. So the things he does may look terrible to us. I think if there is a God, some kind of creator like that, then that's what it is. He's done just really fucked up things according to us. That he has chosen the people of Israel, and that he really, according to my reading of the Bible, doesn't want anything to do with non-Jewish people. That's what I think. Well, I mean, when you.
But I like that now we both had a turn to go off on something, and the other person just has to. Well, I'm just taking it in.
It's something that very much, if you read the Gospels, Jesus did not come for non-Gentile, or did not come for non-Jewish people. He absolutely came for Judeans, or the people of Israel, and that the Apostle Paul just kind of like.
You think Jesus was a real person, though, yeah?
Oh, yeah, Jesus was a real person.
I think he was a guy.
He was a real guy, and I think he was a real, like, trying to save, Judeans or Jewish people at the time against the Roman Empire. And so I think a lot of his teachings, outside of John, Matthew, Luke, and Mark, are, like, for, people, the way for people to look at life. Very Eastern, very Buddhist in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, actually, I mean, what's funny is that I have such like trauma around religion. It's a buzzword. That I'm actually now I feel a little more just whole and basically I am interested in like sort of revisiting the Bible as I am now, because in a lot of the Buddhist texts that I read, like they talk about Jesus all the time.
Yeah.
They think he's great.
Yeah.
They're like, no, we're doing the same thing. But I also have that, that cool church bait and switch thing where there's always just like some guy kick flips on stage and he's like, Jesus was actually kind of a weird dude. But he was. Yeah. And I really am like, now that I've separated what I actually don't believe in terms of Christianity, it's like, I think like the teachings of Christ are quite beautiful.
I mean, we got to play this clip. I didn't plan it. Hold on, Gerardo. I'm going to text it to you. This is a Stephen Furtner clip.
Oh, I only follow one cool pastor online. You really got the whole suite.
I mean, we're always looking for more. This Stephen Furtner clip has been going around
Stephen
Twitter.
Furtner?
Yeah, he's probably the most popular. He's pastor at a place called Elevation Church in South Carolina, I believe, or North Carolina. Mm-hmm. But this was going around Twitter. I didn't want to play it because it's kind of popular, but I
haven't seen it.
It's so funny to do with what you're talking about. Do you want to press play, Gerardo?
Oh, my God.
Oh, you guys need headphones.
Oh, yeah, headphones up.
Oh, sorry. Headphone hive, rise up. I'm so excited to see this guy.
That's why they had to take the Old Town Road off of the Billboard charts on country music, because it was too different. They couldn't find a category for it. And they said it's not country enough, but it's not rap enough, and we don't know what it is. It's different. That's why they crucified Jesus. That's why they had to take the Old Town Road off of the
This is me talking about growing up between clown and stand-up.
It was too different.
This is me when I try to explain, oh, is she a clown? Is she stand-up? And I'm like, I'm neither. I don't belong. I'm in this world, but I'm not of the world.
I love that. Yeah, that is so great, isn't it?
But the jump.
Of course, that's the joke.
But this is, I've struggled with this a lot because, like, I think my dad was like both of my parents are frustrated artists in many ways, and I became an intellectual. I read somewhere that, like, in a psychology book, that, like, if you grow up in a chaotic home, you tend to become an intellectual because that's the way of putting things in order. But I am an artist, so I kind of like tearing that apart. I do think, like, is this me? I've had that big confrontation with, like, my relationship to the industry and to what I'm trying to do. I'm like, is this really me? Like, do I really want this? Or am I, like, carrying on the, like, psychic inheritance of, like, my parents' unfulfilled dreams? And it's really hard. And, like, do I even really want this?
Are they proud of you?
I don't know.
What do they?
I think they're impressed.
Yes.
But I don't think, to be perfectly honest, we actually don't talk very much. And I don't think they really know me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everyone who wouldn't be proud of me, I think I work really hard and I've done something pretty cool all on my own. But I think it's a little bit, I think about, actually, I mean, I guess I'm trying to think about, like, I kind of don't, in a real way, and I think everyone needs to get this point, like, I kind of don't care.
Yes.
I don't care what they think about what I do. I think for a while I did. And then I got in the space where I'm like, especially like, I think just stand-up is so much like preaching. It's like secular preaching. And I'm like, am I just doing this because like da-da-da-da? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe the wound is where the gold is. Like, I had to have that reckoning with like, how much of this is mine? How much is this of like, have I carried over? I think that's a real thing. You have to always deal with like whatever shit your parents didn't do, and you do it or you don't. You have to decide how much of it is yours or not. But like, I totally lost my train of thought. This was something. This was going to be more about the clip, but
even when you're talking about Jesus and then you're talking about your parents, I think that's a gift to any artist where you could eventually just write off your parents. I think it's a important part for growing up, but also if you're an artist, I think it might be the most important thing.
Well, yeah. One of the first like pieces of writing advice. I think it's a famous piece of writing advice. You probably like write as if your parents are dead. It's true. It's just a good thing to think about. Like, I can't. I don't know what they think, and I I can't care too much because like I have my life, and it's like we have to have a relationship outside of whatever I do creatively or professionally. And if they feel offended by it or they feel that it reflects on them in some way, I mean, they're just mistaken. Nothing I do reflects on anyone but me.
Yes.
So, and that's something I deal with not just with my parents, but with a lot of people. You know, people love putting their shit on you when you're trying to get a thing going.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Speaking of putting shit on people, I wanted to
another clip.
No.
What if he seamlessly like plugged another clip?
Seamlessly plugged in 2 girls, 1 cup.
No, I read a comment of somebody trying to defend Furtner.
Yeah,
saying really interesting that you'll cut off at the point where he self-references the point and reveals that yes, not a lot of preachers will use Lil Nas and Jesus in the same sentence, but of course that won't serve your agenda, would it? Shake my head, anything for clout.
Who taught these people this? But that's a little bit like, it's such a hot girl thing. Like, oh yeah, not every pastor would reference Jesus and Lil Nas. But
I like how you left that part out where he like it was self-aware.
I do think, writ large though, aren't we as a culture? Don't you think we're reckoning with this like binary thinking? I think it comes out more. I think it manifests most acutely in like gender and sexuality, but like that kind of thinking is not good for writ large.
Oh no, absolutely. I think
that's why moving into quad computing, we got to get past this like 2-party system. Like nothing about binary thinking on any level is productive, I think.
Oh yeah, and I think yeah, absolutely. That's why it's so funny to me where it's like when people are stuck on the, non-binary or anything like that, it's like, man, I mean, anybody who's like queer or thinking about things, I'm so beyond that. I identify as queer because I guess just so you'll know that I'm not coming from wherever you think I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Even poly to me doesn't mean what it used to mean. It's the idea.
These things are just like, these words are even just like shorthands to kind of give people a heads up about.
Yes.
And it's more about not saying something about who you are. It's more about like, I gotta undo what you're already thinking about me.
Yes. And that's all the things mean to me. Whether or not I don't even, maybe there was a time where I thought about like, oh, can I even say I'm bisexual? Like if I haven't had a romantic relationship, I just don't care about any of this stuff. But I'm giving you, these are little word space fillers for whatever comes next.
Yeah. I think identity writ large is a total racket.
What do you mean when you say that?
I'm
individualism
joking.
Or identity? I mean,
maybe I'm conflating the two.
Yeah.
But the self, not my favorite invention culturally.
Well, it is such bullshit capitalism American shit.
It started in it started in the 18th century.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All this stuff.
It's a Western thing.
Did we talk about the birthday thing? We did, right?
Yeah, we talked about that last episode.
It's just we've been celebrating birthdays for like 100 years. It's like nothing.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
It's my birthday in a few weeks. I'm hosting Tomorrow's Show on my birthday, December 18th. Everyone come out.
There you go.
I was going to put together should I do a show? I'm like, I don't want to do a show. Then I was going to put together a show where I just like have people that I like. I'm like, I don't want to do any work. It's just, Tomorrow's Show just happens to be on my birthday. So Ron was like, well, you can pick a few people to be on the lineup. And I'm like, great. But who cares?
Yes.
I think that binary thinking had its place. I don't think it's everything that's binary is bad. I guess I'd take a different approach to that thinking.
No, but this is the subtlety. Me even saying binary thinking is bad.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, that's a one way of thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It just doesn't. I think it just doesn't matter.
I mean, like now we've made it so far as people that we're able to open our eyes more to the fact that maybe gender isn't binary, maybe sexuality isn't binary, or even just like there's only one way to fucking have sex.
Yeah.
Wait, there's more than one way?
Yes.
It's just missionary for me.
You can take it doggy style if you're a guy.
Yeah, there are positions in which you face each other. Where have I been?
I mean, the more you hear indigenous people talk about this, they didn't think like that anyway.
Yeah. Yes, it's not even new.
Yeah, they didn't think like there were trans, for lack of a better term, there were trans people. It didn't matter who you had sex with. We've made sex to be this huge thing. We fetishized sex in a lot of ways to make it this big thing when it doesn't even have to be that thing.
Yeah, but show me one indigenous person that made a computer, Doug.
Ones and zeros, bro.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that binary thinking ruined everything. It started with the zeros and ones, and they're like, let's put this binary thinking into a box that would be like a method of evaluating our whole lives. And then I trusted it. I clicked on all of the images with traffic lights in them, and it fixed nothing. Wow.
Thank you so much for coming on, Christina.
Thank you for having me. Sorry, I looked at myself on the monitor
That's
too
all
much.
right. It's hard not to.
Look at her. Wait, can you put it back on? Oh. Hi.
You'll have to come to church with us sometime. I think you'll.
That's
like
gonna
it.
be so. That's gonna be such. It's gonna be so hard and big for me. But I'll go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want it to be that much of a thing for you.
It'll be a thing, but I'll do it.
All right.
This is what I do now. I do things. I'm vulnerable.
One thing that you said that really bothered me was the whole Pepsi thing. I just want to button it off here. My dad used to work for Pepsi, and
Yes.
he was pretty high up in Pepsi.
Yeah.
We went to Mexico to go visit cousins of mine, and one of my cousins came downstairs with nothing but Coke on.
Yeah.
Like a shirt, hat, pants.
Yeah.
And then he commented that even his underwear was Coke.
Oh, okay.
So like, what's more Mexican? You know what I'm saying? The guy.
Well, maybe American Mexican when I'm saying it, because I do
okay.
know it to be a thing. I'm not familiar.
Oh,
with
I think maybe it's a Mexican American thing to fetishize Mexican Coke because that's
exactly.
like as a consumer. Wow, as a commodity fetish, there's a very the qualitative meaning of Mexican Coke is pretty fraught.
I've been thinking about it the whole podcast.
I've been thinking. I'm gonna think about this all night.
I mean, just the fact that your dad worked for Pepsi now, to me, I think backs up my theory.
Also, here's the thing. Also, I think you're just trying to think you're all bad and shakes. You're like, better like my dad worked big time at Pepsi.
Your dad was there. Yeah, I think I remember you saying this off air. Your dad was there when the Flaming Hot Cheetos were created. Is that true?
Yeah, he worked with Richard Martinez.
Okay. Yes.
I met Richard Martinez when I was 13 or 14 years old.
Wow, this is a huge. I want to read his book. This is you're opening up a hole at the can of worms. There's a big controversy over the.
Oh yeah, we're not going to get into it.
We're not going to get into it.
Have you talked about it on Isimo?
Oh yeah, that's our third episode.
Oh,
okay, well I need to check that.
Yeah.
And then I'll decide whether or not we're friends.
Richard Martinez liked one of the clips.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He's keeping tabs.
Yep.
He's keeping tabs.
Go check out Christina Catherine Martinez at the Tomorrow Show at the Elysian on December 18th at midnight, or is it 11:30?
I think it's 11:45, and I'm also. It's just my birth. I'm just hosting it because I don't want to do work. But come out and see some. Who's on it? Jamie Loftus, James Adomian, Adam Conover, some clown people.
Yeah,
and then one really great performance artist named Patrick Ballard, who's not a comedian, but I think people should see what he does.
All right. Well, if you're in the LA area, come out, come see us, come say hi. Where can we find you online, Christina?
I have a website. It's called ChristinaCatherine.info, but I'm really up on Instagram. It's xtina_Catherine, and I'm usually really good at posting about shows or things that I've written or what's going on there.
And fun videos too on Instagram stories.
Oh, fun videos. Also, every few months I go viral on Twitter, but it's not a big deal.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe at YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then, of course, subscribe to our Patreon for tons of bonus episodes at patreon.com/Read the Bible Podcast. Read the Bible with me podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Rate and review. I love you, Gerardo. We'll see you guys next week.